got a big fight card this week. Headlined by David Benavidez and Anthony Yarde. I'm going to go through all the fights and then kind of, break them down one by one. So we'll start the main event. David Benavidez, Anthony Yarde. Now, I think they want to make David Benavidez into a big star, and understandably so, because he's a, great talent and very exciting fighter. And they want to set him up to fight guys like Dimitri Bivol, Artur Beterbiev, maybe even Canelo still. You got Anthony Yarde. Yarde has lost both of his opportunities that he's had at the top level. First versus Sergey Kovalev and then versus Artur Beterbiev. However, he was doing well in those fights before he ran out of gas and those guys came back to knock him out. So he's shown that he can compete at top level. He just hasn't finished the job at top level. This is a good fight. I like David Benavidez to have a highlight reel KO. I think that Benavidez is going to hit Yarde more than Beterbiev or Kovalev. I think Kovalev was old and past it at that point. I think that Beterbiev's had a problem with Yarde's reflexes, which are really fast. And I don't think Beterbiev has Benavidez's high guard defense. Now, Beterbiev's a lot bigger puncher, obviously. I think Benavidez stops him. I'm going to go around like 8 or so. I think this is very one-sided. I think that David Benavidez shows you why he's one of the best in the sport. And he gets his first major KO at this weight class. Because I know versus Gvozdyk and versus David Morrell, people said, yeah, you're winning, but you're not dominating the way you dominated those guys at 168, like Andrade, Gabriel, Lemieux, guys like that. So I think that this is a good fight. I do think that Yarde's probably has a little more one-punch power, and he probably... the problem is he probably doesn't have the fast reflexes, but he is kind of like have that quick, explosive, first step where he could kind of catch him, Benavidez. But I think Benavidez is better defensively than he gets credited for. I think his high guard is really strong, and I think the key with Benavidez is he gets hit somewhat, but he doesn't really get hit by any like the major shots. So I like David Benavidez to knock out Anthony Yarde in the first 10 rounds. Now we move to the second fight, Devin Haney versus Brian Norman. Brian Norman versus Devin Haney, because Brian Norman is the champion. This is very interesting, and this fight is talked about more. This is more talked about, this fight, than the main event. I think that they put that as the main event because Benavidez, they want to make him a star, but this is the fight that really has people talking. Devin Haney, he's really probably the most polarizing person in boxing. Like, some people, they love him, and they think he's like Floyd Mayweather reincarnated, and some people are like, this dude's a baby, he's suing Ryan Garcia, I can't stand him, I hate him, I want to see him lose. I'm kind of neutral on it, to be honest with you. I think Haney's a good fighter. I don't think he's a pound-for-pound fighter. I certainly don't think he's at that level of a Floyd Mayweather or Sugar Ray Leonard, the way Eddie Hearn was hyping him up when he was with Matchroom. But yes, he did get cheated versus Ryan Garcia, and that is something that you have to acknowledge. I think that Haney has shown he's willing to step up and fight good opposition, even though I thought he lost to Lomachenko. Listen, he did the fight. Beat Kambosos twice in Australia, Regis Progress, and now he's fighting against Brian Norman, who's the number one guy at the welterweight division, albeit a weak welterweight division. I get it, because there's no more Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Jaron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, Keith Thurman, so on and so on. And now it's like Mario Barrios, Brian Norman, Stanionis, Blair the Flair, Cobbs. Point is, the division's weaker than I've ever seen it. But still, you got to give him credit. And then we get this guy, Brian Norman. Now, he really raised my attention when he knocked out Giovanni Santillán, who knocked out Rocha to get that WBO title. I was not familiar with Brian Norman, but he showed a lot in that fight. He's a banger. He throws big punches, methodical, and he is someone who I feel like didn't get any recognition till then, but has since knocked out two, not top-level opponents, but that knockout versus Sasaki, that was a knockout of the year potential. Probably is. Now, obviously, Brian Norman's never fought anyone at Devin Haney's level. We get that. Haney's the much more experienced fighter. He's fought Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, Regis Progress, George Kambosos, so on and so on and so on. We get it. Jose Ramirez even. Haney in that last fight versus Jose Ramirez looked very afraid. He looked very gun-shy, but he just gotten beat up by Ryan Garcia, and mentally he had to come back from that. I think this is an easy win for Devin Haney. I think Haney outboxes Norman easily. I think Norman's feet are too slow. I think he fights more methodical, and he's not going to be able to get in range. Now, people are going to say, oh, but Ryan Garcia did. Ryan Garcia is a lot faster than Brian Norman, and that's what people don't realize. In reflexes and in hand speed. Norman doesn't have that. Now, Norman's better defensively, and he's better at going to the body than Ryan Garcia. He's more of a technician. I think Ryan's more of an athlete who fights. But I think that Haney's a better technician than Brian Norman. I think Haney wins this fight handily and becomes the welterweight champ. And you got to give it to him. He'd be a 3-belt holder. Even though I don't think he really beat Lomachenko, by the numbers, he would be a 3-division champion. I like Haney in this fight. This is probably the most interesting fight for me on the card. And this is the most talked about fight on the card. So I'm looking forward. Then we get Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez. Now, Bam is one of the pound-for-pound best in the sport. But I think this is going to be the toughest fight for him in his career because Fernando Martinez is relentless. He beat Joe Nakaz, a guy who I had a lot of respect for and I thought very highly of, who signed to Pacquiao. He kind of reminded me of Manny Pacquiao in terms of the fighting style, not in terms of how good he is, and Kaz. And he beat him twice, and even in the rematch, a lot of people didn't think he was going to beat him after the first one. He came back and beat him. This guy, Fernando Martinez, he's older, but he's a man on a mission, and he's been slept on. And I love what Al Bernstein said in Ring Magazine, which I got over here, about Fernando Martinez not getting the respect. He gave a whole list of fighters that, don't get enough respect in the game, the Rodney Dangerfield Award. And he's one of them, man, because he's been on a run. He's going to put a lot of pressure on Jesse Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez's superior speed and footwork make the difference. But it's going to be a good competitive fight. I think it's like an 8-4 type fight for Bam Rodriguez. I think this is his toughest fight of his career. I know he's fought bigger names, but those guys were older, really. I think this is the toughest fight of his career. And Bam, man, he just keeps fighting top guys, man. He's a great fighter. I think he's awesome. One of the best in the world. But don't count Fernando Martinez out. That's a good fight. And then we get to Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. I'm not super familiar with Sam Noakes, so this one I have to be real about. I expect Mason to be able to get that WBO title and be able to stop him. I think Mason's a big puncher. Now, Mason got dropped twice recently in one of his fights. His defense needs a little bit of tuning. But I think that Mason's a gym rat. And to me, he's in position to take place of what Keyshawn Davis was, because Keyshawn Davis had knocked out, what's his name, Baranchuk, and he blew it. He missed weight versus Edwin De Los Santos, and I think Top Rank's now like, no. Abdullah Mason's our number one priority at this division, and now that they don't have Shakur, I think that. So I think Mason's got a chance to be a major player in the game with guys like Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Davis and Keyshawn Davis as well. So I think that I got Abdullah Mason by stoppage. Big shout out to Vito Melnick, who's also on the card. Let me know what you guys think about this card. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Peace.